Hi, everybody who's here in real time and who's going to be watching later. I'm Rebecca Babcock. I'm the founder of Rebecca Babcock Coaching and the creator of the Babcock Method. And the way I coach is really different than what's in the marketplace. And I spend a lot of time trying to explain that I don't just help you find a new job or fix a relationship, but that really it's about a core level transformation and understanding who you are and what you want and what your purpose is. And the best way to explain what I do is to not listen to me talk about it at all, but to invite clients of mine who have amazing experiences, amazing stories, amazing transformations, and help them to talk about what's going on in their life, because then you know it must be true. And it's better than me just talking about it on my own. So today's guest is somebody I'm really excited to introduce you to. His name is Greg Hoover. And just to tell you a little bit about him, but this is more of, the bio type of thing. Following an executive career that included more than 25 years in the C-suite, Greg has founded ThirdStar Consulting. He founded it in 2024. His role as a consultant and speaker and author and all-around leader helps organizations, it helps teams, it helps individuals to increase their impact and their success regardless of their role or industry. So here's the part that I really love. He wrote his first book, which is called Lead Anyway: Ordinary You, Extraordinary Impact in 2025. He now has workshops and coaching and keynote speaking, and it's all centered around this principle that obviously I hold very close to the heart, that all people are leaders, regardless of your title or your position. We can all improve the world and the people around us and our experience and the experience of others just by following some basic principles, which are all laid out in Lead Anyway. So without further ado, let me introduce you and bring to the stage Greg Hoover.
Good morning, Rebecca. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. It's a Thursday here in New York, and we're just breaking.
It's Thursday in Indiana too.
Yeah,
what a coincidence.
Believe it or not, we're in the same time zone. So
yeah, right.
There's so many things I want you to share and talk about, and so many things I want to celebrate about you and your book, which I'll pull off the bookshelf in a second because it's real. It's not just an ebook. I think that the way I'd love to start, though, is I'd love to ask you a little bit about, your position on leadership and reinvention and identity beyond the title, right? I read your bio. It says I worked in the C-suite for 25 years. So I guess the first thing I want to hear from you is, how did you previously define your success? What was happening to you? What were the realities of working at those high levels? What changed? Just so we can get an idea of how you got here.
Sure. I think the first thing is, and I think to some degree we all go through this, whether we realize it or not, but so many of us, particularly as you advance in your career or your life, you're defined by your role. And, particularly in the C-suite, assuming you're doing your job, it becomes about people. There's a certain level of deference that you get. There's a certain level of respect that you get just because of your title. I don't think that excuses performance. You still have to be good at what you do, but it's a little, from our many conversations, I draw a lot of athletic parallels, and to me, it's so similar. In fact, I was doing a podcast as a guest a week or so ago, and this kind of hit me out of the blue. Life really comes in three parts, right? There's the learning phase, there's what I would call the playing phase, and then there's the coaching phase. And if you think about professional athletes, right, they grow up as a kid, they learn their sport, they get better at it, they go to college, then they become a professional and have a great career. And then what happens? And right. A lot of athletes have trouble transitioning to that. Do you coach? Do you go into business?
Right. Yeah.
And it occurred to me that parallels the same personally, right? We grow up as kids, we go to school, we go to college, we get a career, we build and learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the pro phase. And for me, that was the 25 years in the C-suite. And all of a sudden that's over for whatever reason. It changes. Right. And we have to find out what's next. And that's really the evolution for me these last couple of years. Leading, has changed in definition for me, but I've always had this passion inside that everybody has a chance to impact. You might not be the CEO. You might not even be a manager or director, but you impact people every day by your presence, by your intentionality, by how you treat people, by the way that you show up. And so that kind of led into this phase. And, thanks to a tremendous amount of help from you and your coaching team, that's helped me navigate that really, particularly over the last year and some of the evolution that's come from that. But it just has introduced for me a real clarity and kind of a decluttering, getting rid of the stuff that you don't need, the stuff that doesn't fit anymore. I think of it like my closet, right? When you lose a bunch of weight or you change careers, and my 72 Harley shirts don't hold value for me anymore, and so that's been a huge part of it. Yeah, right.
It's interesting, Greg, because I was talking to a prospective client yesterday who has had a very impressive career, their version of C-suite, who is feeling like ageism is getting him, and he said, no one will take me. Well, they only want younger people. They want people who know AI. And he said, and even when I try to get jobs in a nonprofit space, they think I'm too expensive. That for him, that was a lot of projection and assumption and interpretations and all of that. But the point is that something brought you to coaching, right? After a successful career. And it sounds like what it was a very, a feeling that a lot of people can relate to, which is like, I'm not done, but I need to be done with this phase.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, and I think probably there's a lot of people in my circumstance that it was not voluntary, right? I was exited, and that was tough for me. That had never happened to me before. I've always been a performer. I've never not performed. I would make the case that I even performed in that position and did well, but all of a sudden you find yourself. And I kind of went through that same thing because I thought, well, everybody knows me. I've been great at what I did. I've had these great positions. I'll have a job in a month. I was actually thinking, how much time do I want to take off before I go back to work?
Right.
And it just didn't happen. And, it was a tough market when that happened to me, and tough in the industry, but there is some of that. There's people that think you're too expensive, or I love nonprofits and have a passion for that. And nonprofits were all like, well, we're not sure that would be a good fit, and so all of a sudden for me, I was lucky that I right away came into a couple of fractional and consulting roles, which kind of kept it going. And that's when I formed the LLC. But it has evolved from that, and I think like anything, you start to find your space. But very much, I can relate 100% to what you said about your prospective client. It absolutely is. You're used to plugging into a system and having a team and having people. That was the big thing for me. I miss going in every day and seeing people. I love interaction. I love impacting people, face-to-face stuff. And even if it's remote, you're still dealing with people every day, and there's a setting, and you have to create that, right? You have to change the context of what you do and where you have impact, and you have to come to terms with that. You still have impact. You still have your skills. You still have your personality. You still have your abilities. But, just like the guy who's the great quarterback and doesn't play anymore, he's got to figure out, okay, how do I apply those skills and talents, and how do I reset to get into this new mode? And you got to find that,
So this is the thing that you're saying, where for a lot of other people, and this happened to me at 35, not later on, where everything that I'd worked so hard for and I'd built and I designed for myself completely fell apart. And for me at the same time, my health fell apart, and I had these 5 surgeries, and I had all these things. My marriage fell apart, my career fell apart. But the point is, there's kind of 2 types of people. And some of them then fall apart into that, and they become the victim to the circumstances, and other people rise out of it. Your book, your ethos, your entire way of being is about lead anyway. So it's not lead when you've got the C-suite title. It's not lead when you've got a bank account with a bunch of zeros in it. It's leadership, period. Right. So I think it would be helpful for a lot of people to hear, how this relationship with leadership evolved, what changed internally, maybe even before, you wrote a book. But you had to write the book before the book could be out there, and you could have workshops and speaking engagements and consulting and all the amazing things you do that hopefully people listening and watching will tell them more about how they can work with you in a minute. But what changed so that you could actually redefine leadership in a way that didn't feel like I used to be a leader, but I can't be anymore?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing, I can't tell that story or talk about that without talking about, who I am and who I was and where I came from. My father passed away when I was 11, and that left my mom and I, and had a farm, had a mortgage. She had a bookkeeper's job, and so early on, I was 11, and it's like, dude, you play or get out of the game, and there just weren't any options, right? So I started working at an early age and understanding contribution, and everybody contributes and everybody has something to give. But there was an interesting track beside that. I was fortunate enough and blessed in 2011, one of the first distinguished alumni classes my high school had. I was nominated, put into that, and we do these interviews, and they have a program. And one of the things they asked me, they said, why is this meaningful to you? And I said, well, because to me it identifies there was an entire community that helped raise me, coaches and teachers and parents of my friends and other people, and that was a way to recognize that and give something back to them. But that the parallel part of that I learned along the course of my life is everybody contributes. And I wasn't, I had amazing teachers and coaches and, other parents, but people at church, the guy where I bought my gas. There were people that contributed to my life. And it occurred to me very early on.
That is lead anyway, right? Because it's like, 100%. Even if you don't have the title of father, lead anyway, show up.
Right. Be intentional, right? There's a way you can impact this kid that you're going to see tomorrow. There's a thing that you can do. And there are so many people that influence me that way. And so I think it's been in the background or running in the underground of my life ever since. And even in work, part of my mission when I was full blown headlong into my career was how do I contribute? Where do I find where I can contribute and have the most value and give the most back and be, and some of that was probably psychologically driven by the wrong things. It was important. I wanted to give back and I wanted to create value because I want everybody to like me and I hope I'm good, but that's always been an undercurrent to the things that I do is how do I create value and help other people,
So, I'm probably going to go totally off script, but there's 3 things you just said that I think are really important. One is I want everyone who's listening to this to hear this. I'm talking about how my marriage ended, my career ended, that I had my entire colon removed. Like, Greg and I aren't coming here on the wings of glory to be like, our life has been absolutely amazing. And as a result, we are amazing leaders. Like,
I'm having a great hair day.
Right. And, good or bad hair day, you just got to show up. Greg, you talked about being let go from a job that had really become your identity, right? You've talked about death of your father early on and how that shaped you. So I just want to, one of the big ethos behind everything I do is tell the truth because it actually doesn't alienate you. It connects you. And even your story in your childhood, people knew that you were struggling, so they came in to help. So if we aren't honest and transparent about what's going on, we are selfishly holding back other people and not giving them the opportunity to step in. So you could have said, woe is me, poor me. I used to have a big fancy job and now I don't. I'm just going to sulk over here in the corner. And it's LinkedIn's fault. And it's because I'm a white man and it's because of my age and all that stuff. And you didn't. Instead, you wrote a book. And you wrote the book because you already believed it. But I think that anybody would like to know because, you're not 16 and you've published this book, not at the height of your career, but when it was sort of coming to an end. So what motivated you gave you the courage, writing the book, creating the consultancy? I know the consultancy was more like, well, people want to hire me. So cool, I'll do this thing. But the book was something that had been rattling around in your mind for a while. And then you actually had the courage to do it.
Yeah, I've been a writer forever. I was published in my local small town newspaper when I was like 9 years old. I wrote a letter to the editor about pollution or ecology. I can't even remember. And the editor, who passed away about 10 or 12 years ago, but she became a very dear friend. And she called the house one night and asked if I would write a weekly column. It was a weekly newspaper.
Wow.
So when I was 9, I had a weekly column about saving the planet. But I've always loved writing. I blogged on a sporting news site for a while, and I've always loved writing. And so in the back of my head, it was always about a book. And as you know, I'm not an academic writer. I'm not that formal. It's in my voice. And I started putting these thoughts down, and I had an outline and had kind of fleshed it out. And there were two key moments to that. The first was I had lunch probably about a year and a half ago now, with my good friend Joe Ellsworth. And Joe asked me how the book was coming. I said, I just don't think I have a book, Joe. I don't, it's only, I probably right now it's about 130 pages, and I just don't think it gets there. And he said, so it's 130 pages. I mean, you're a reader. What's on your nightstand that you're reading? Most stuff today, business especially, is 125 to 175 pages. Doesn't need to be a treatise. He said, I'd tell you, just put your thoughts down and it'll find its crowd. And so from that, I started shaping it a little bit. And then I started working with you. And I think one of the first coaches in your repertoire that I got to work with was Susan Bash. And she asked me one day, she said, what's that?
Your career is your adventure, she said.
Yeah. And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I could do this, or no, she said, I didn't ask you what you could do. I said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I used to do a lot of speaking, public speaking to big groups, up to 1,000 people. And I've always liked to write. So yeah, in a perfect world, but that it could never happen, but I'd love to be a speaker and an author. And she goes, well, then you're a speaker and an author. And
so it is.
2 months later, the book was done, and published. And
everyone needs it. And I'll grab it so everyone can see what it looks like. But the feedback that you consistently get is that this is not a how to lead in a leadership. This is real practice. You can see on mine, there's all these pages.
Yeah.
It's practical. Everyone can get it on Amazon. The point of this is not just to promote the book, but the idea is you didn't write this at a time when people might think that, you'd be writing a book because yes, Brad, yay to Susan. She's amazing, guys. We'll tag her when we post this. The point is that you wrote this book in a time that leadership goes beyond title, right? And struggling with this idea of identity versus achievement.
For sure.
And that they are not the exact same thing. And the reinvention. So here we are now, right? You've got this book. You have a Lead Anyway Live that we're about to talk about in a minute. What's the advice that you have for people that are going through, about leading yourself first, about reinvention, about growth that continues after, it's sort of like the death of ego for you, in a sense that it was like, okay, so maybe you're never, and you never know. Greg could get snatched up and be another CEO tomorrow. I don't know if he'll want to do it, but it's not past you. But how'd you get here?
Yeah, the work that we did together was so important, and I think there's two words that I use a lot in my practice, but I think are critical, and it's clarity and alignment. Right? You have to have alignment. But alignment doesn't come without clarity. And exactly. I think we were talking about, I can't remember if it was this morning or a week or so ago, but I think to myself, I think it's a lot like when you downsize or you declutter, right? There's clothes I have that don't serve me. There's suits I have that don't fit anymore. I've lost a bunch of weight, or I'm not in the boardroom, and so for me, it was a decluttering of my head, getting out all these preconceptions and all these things in my mind that, well, this doesn't work unless it's this, and just clear that. Start from zero, start with a plain blank white piece of paper, and then just get clarity around who you are and what you want. And your skills and your passions will emerge from that. And we kid in our master's class about, the woo woo, right? I know our buddies listening, but I believe in that stuff. And so I think if you clear the decks, that's when who you are comes out and who you are emerges. And so you get clarity that leads to alignment, and it almost without fail, it has to lead you to your passion, because that's what emerges when you're in that space.
That is like the basis of everything that I do, is that when we are uncomfortable, we jump into action. We change jobs, we move, right. We get a divorce, we get married, we have a kid. That'll fix it. And if you don't understand at a base level, who am I? What do I want? What's important to me? Is it these things that I've been doing? I checked every every box on that list, and it got me to a place where I was divorced, unemployed, and without a colon, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, and I think anyone who works with me and anyone that we probably associate ourselves with has had that moment. They've had a thing that's happened, whether it's changing of a career or the end of a marriage or a health crisis or a family member getting ill, where they start to ask, like, what's it all really for? And what's it all really about? And, you know, the answer is you don't need to have the title or the bank account to lead. You just got to lead. In my thing, I would say the best is to tell the truth and be your authentic self, and don't try and hide and be something that you're not, and don't assume you need to be smarter or prettier or taller or older or younger or richer in order to stand up. And you know, you have a whole book about this, but I'm actually gonna move us now to, let's see, someone has something nice to say about you. Greg is a great person. He sure is. So
I'm glad to know my son's listening today.
Yeah, right. I don't think that's his son, guys. Okay. So Greg, tell us a little bit. I know you can't see this perfectly, but Greg has a new workshop coming out called Lead Anyway Live. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what this is, who it's for, maybe a sneak peek on what you're going to teach people?
Sure. I appreciate that. Yeah. So this evolved when the book came out. And really the premise of the book is that leadership is in the small acts, right? We you know, and again, I'm back to athletics. We think about throwing the touchdown pass in the Super Bowl or hitting a home run in the World Series. That doesn't just happen. That comes after years of at-bats and tons of practice and the small moments of showing up on time every day and taking infield and doing the things you need to do. And leadership is the same way. And so when the book came out, I got some work. I had some people say, we'd like you to offer this to our team. So the initial thing was an on-site group thing for companies that was 8 to 10 or 12 people, either current leadership teams, groups that you wanted to ascend into leadership, or I did one company-wide meeting that kind of was the principle. But what came out of that was there are a lot of small companies that either can't afford to have you on site or only have 3 or 4 people. So what do? And conversely, kind of parallel to that was there's this track emerging of people that liked the book and thought it was interesting and wanted to do the work, but I'm not a part of a team that's doing this, or I can't be on site for a group meeting. So I came up with this workshop. It's an 8-week workshop, 8-hour-long sessions. And it's basically the principles of Lead Anyway, but it's scaled to the individual. And it's presented as a Zoom conference. We limit the classes to 15 per, just so we're not overwhelmingly large and clunky. And yeah, we're kicking the first one off June 17th, once a week for an hour. And I'm really excited about it. I've gotten some good kind of pilot feedback on it, and very excited to have kind of a new avenue and something geared a little bit more to the individual.
So this is very small print. Obviously, we'll add a link to this later, but if you can't get there, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, that will be recorded. There's going to be exercises and teaching and practical action. That's what's so important. Leadership becomes this buzzword that we're all kind of talking about. Oh, let's talk money for a second. So this is insanely affordable, everybody, for something that, and the idea of what Greg was saying about Lead Anyway, that also means show up even if your company's not paying for it. Even if you think, oh, my company can't do leadership training and there's only 3 employees. Yeah, you can. Everybody can, right? It's about showing up exactly where you are. And he has absolutely created an environment in which that's feasible. So the cost is $695 if you register early, which is basically right now. There's a discount, but also if you register with me, he's going to give you another $100 off. Okay, I feel like Oprah.
Ding, 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 ding,
ding, ding, ding. So I'll get you the info for that in a second, everybody. Basically, you just have to mention me. And I cannot tell you how practical and valuable and important this is. Greg, do you want to maybe let's give a real life example, right? So someone comes and says, I'm a middle manager. I can't even get my boss to listen to me. Like, cool, I'd love to lead, but no one's taking me seriously. And then at home, I'm exhausted because I'm working all day. And then I get home and, my partner's upset because I'm constantly looking at my phone because I'm trying to figure out things going at work. But at work, I don't feel seen. And at home, I feel overwhelmed because there's so much responsibility. So, how does that person lead anyway?
One of the things I talk about at the back of the book, there's a section, and it's a 30-day program, and it's got like daily 4-week program, daily exercises. And the thing that I try and get into people at the beginning of this is about, we talked about the small actions. So, if you're walking into, I don't know if anybody goes to the mall anymore. If you're walking into the mall, if you're going into a restaurant, if you're going to the grocery store, hold the door open for somebody, right? If you pass somebody, say hello. It's intentionality in the small acts. And one of the things in the back of the book in this program is every day there's an exercise. Do this today. And it might just be saying hello to somebody, making eye contact, because that's where you start to be intentional and you start to realize your impact, that I may not know a thing about this person. And if I say hello to them, passing in the aisle in the grocery store, I may have just made their day.
Yep.
I tell a story in the book, which is a true story. It was, I'd moved back to Evansville and I walk every day, and I was walking through my neighborhood, and I think most people would tell you I'm a friendly guy, but I'm that guy that when I was out, I don't speak to people, right? If I'm walking and somebody's coming, I look down, or maybe I'll cross the street or whatever. And one day I just thought, that's kind of stupid. I need to speak to people. And so I got to where if somebody was out in their yard, I'd say hello, to say, how you doing? And I love having a great yard. I don't have one right now, but I always appreciate when people take care of their home and their yard. And so I was walking, I was about 3 blocks from my house, and there was a woman out in the front yard, and she was working in the flower bed. And I said, "Hey, good morning. I just wanted to tell you your house always looks great." And she stood up and turned around and looked at me, and I thought she was going to burst into tears. And she goes, "Oh my God, you just don't know how much that means." She goes, "I've had a really lousy week, and sometimes it just means more than when people say something nice to you." And I thought I was going to cry.
Right.
And I just told her, I said, "Well, every day I walk by, your lawn's always perfect, and I wish my yard looked half as good as yours." And she said, "My name's Susan." And I said, "Well, I'm Greg." And every time I saw her after that, she'd be outside, she'd speak to me. She's since moved out. I probably chased her out of the neighborhood. I don't know, but it's little things like that. And that's really what it is be intentional about your presence today. And everything that you do has an impact. You don't know who your impact, I talk a lot in the book about kindness and empathy. And I had somebody say to me, "Man, you draw a lot of parallels between leadership and kindness." And I do, because I don't know how you lead if you're not kind. I don't know how you lead if you don't have
what it's
empathy.
been like to be led by people who don't have empathy. I mean, all of these are like the touchstones of everything that I talk about with people, which is that you don't need to be a boss. You don't need to act like a boss. People think, oh, your boss knows everything. They're not vulnerable. We all know the difference between a boss and a leader. And a leader is somebody who is kind, they're empathetic, they're honest, they're straightforward, they tell the truth. And we don't have to wait at any moment to be that person or to see someone else struggling, like your childhood, like your town and your neighborhood and the people in your community who came to help. That wasn't because they were getting paid. So any final thoughts that you want to share on impact, on purpose, on growth, on leading anyway? Anything? I mean, you have a million things that you could say. One thing I'll say is don't give it all away for free. Everyone sign up for Lead Anyway Live, which we'll have the info for. But anything else you'd like to share? Because you really, in my opinion, you're more of a role model and more of a leader now than when you had the title, because we can hide behind titles and we can say, well, I'm being paid. They told me I was a leader, so I'm going to lead. But to stand up and say, I'm in a transition in my life and I'm making the best of it. And Greg and I can both speak to we probably don't make the kind of money that we used to make, but the impact is so much more profound and so much more real that in some ways, it's better.
Yeah. The thing I took away from it was what I loved about my role and the things that I did before was the people and the relationships. Right. And I think whatever success I've had in my career, I think was built on that, seeing people where they're at, trying to help them get what they want and need, whether that's a customer or an employee or a manager or somebody that's in my chain. And this, I think, is that at an amplified level. It's just meaningful relationships. I have to say, and you're doing a tremendous job of promoting my stuff, but I can't talk enough about the work that I've done with you and your team. And I posted, which I had somebody say, boy, this is not like you. I posted a video last summer. We've been working together 14 months now.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most, and I've had coaches, I've had people that I've worked with and engaged with and employed, and going back, truthfully, probably 30 plus years of my career, I think it's important to have a coach. And I think that's the athletic side of me coming out. Again, you always need to be coached and get better.
Coach needs a coach. Yeah.
But this has been the most impactful work that I've ever done. And I can't thank enough or compliment enough your model, the way you approach it, the heart that you bring to it, and the team that you've assembled. You got a group of tremendous, who I think now I've met everybody, and it's just a phenomenal program,
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's so much more impactful for me to share people who are creating incredible experiences for themselves and others than to just sit here and be like, I offer a transformational experience, which goes beyond career and goes into
that's how you do your work too. So that's you. That's how this thing works, and it's what you put together, and that's why it's meaningful,
Well, I appreciate you. And again, everybody, Lead Anyway Live, real simple website link, leadanywaylive.com. We'll put it in the notes, but get yourself signed up. Get your team signed up, get your church community signed. Everybody's leading all day long, every day. And at this price, it's something that you can really sink your teeth into and have an extraordinary resource without having to have your company pay for it or, have 25 people to sign up at once. So I can't wait to hear everybody's feedback about their experience with Lead Anyway Live. And Greg, thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on this morning, and I appreciate Brad Kimbrell being out. Brad, for anybody watching and seeing the comments, Brad is the reason I'm here, because Brad and I were in a coaching program together, and Brad referred me to Rebecca and got us connected. And so thanks, Brad. Thanks, Brad.
Phenomenal leader who's leading in every aspect of his life. So go check him out on LinkedIn if you're looking for a job. Thank you again. Thank you for everyone who watched. Thank you for everyone who will watch later. Get the book, sign up, Lead Anyways. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Rebecca.